favorite one was it was a Mother's Day segment, and it was to get like pregnant mothers ready for the dog. And I had this like baby doll with this pit bull. Cool.
So welcome everybody to this installment of Into the Industry. And I feel like with each one of these, I just get more and more excited, or I'm so excited about everybody I get to talk to. But today I have on someone that I respect and admire very, very much. So me and Erin had actually at one point tried to be roommates when we lived in Portland, and we discovered we were both dog trainers, and the roommate thing fell through. But over time, I kind of watched her journey, and she was on the More Good Day morning segment of Portland TV, as well as she does a lot of rescue work. She is an advocate for deaf and blind dogs, and just an all around amazing human when it comes to the industry. And I've just kind of watched her shine and glow, and her career kind of evolve with a move, and her take her own business from one place to another, which is a really difficult thing to do. So we're going to talk to Erin today, and so grab a cup of coffee, listen in, and let's learn about some dog stuff. So Erin, welcome. So we had already been chatting a little bit prior about some rescue stuff, and we'll circle back to that. But I would like to hear from you. You are just like, even though prior we had never met face to face, but just watching your life through Facebook and social media, you just like radiate passion for dogs. And
to say the least, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just so very clear. So I want to know, at what point did you know that dog training was for you? Because much like you've heard on this, there's lots of suggestions of what you should be when you love animals. But when did it like click for you that dog training was it?
Well, I loved your previous podcast talking a little bit how like when you're little and you love animals, it's just immediately pinned that you should be a veterinarian. And so I thought for a while that I wanted to be just a love for animals, and I thought I was going to do the vet thing. And I love looking back at my elementary school, our fifth grade graduates, you can put like future, soccer player. Or future,
yeah.
And I love looking back because mine says future animal movie trainer.
Oh my God, yes! Yes, I actually know somebody who does that, or I had worked on like a TV. It's it's so much harder than what we do.
Totally. So I think, I just think animal behavior has always been something I loved, but there was a huge influence. My uncle worked with elephants for most of his life, and so he worked at different zoos on the West Coast. He went to Thailand and worked with elephants, and so it was a huge passion in our family was to watch. Like everyone was just so in awe of my uncle, and then his wife currently does animal Reiki, and she works at Guide Dogs for the Blind. Nice. They're separated now, but it's pretty cool. It's just kind of been in the family of this, just tons of animal behavior. But I would say, my cliche answer is you just adopt that one naughty dog, But even before that, I really, really got into it when my teacher at Colorado State was Temple Grandin. Mm-hmm. And so my professor was Temple Grandin, and she's a very well-respected animal behaviorist, and she is autistic. And so the way she looked at animals and the way she taught us of how to look around us and what animals could find scary and things that we would never think of, it just clicked for me. And just I wasn't that great. I wasn't really always into school, but anything animal behavior just kind of hooked me. And so then when I adopted my dog at 19, which is like, thinking about that now, I don't know if I would advise a 19-year-old to adopt a dog.
Yeah, I did the same thing. That's nuts.
I think I actually remember you telling me that too.
Yeah.
We went into the Karen Pryor Academy, and it was just from there that I was like, yep, this is it. I'm sold. I may not be the best student on paper, but get me in front of an animal and make me watch its behavior for a couple. And I just got really hooked. So he had so many problems that if I didn't do anything, there's no way I could keep him. So the stars all just started to align, I guess.
Yeah, and there's two really good things there. Well, there's a lot of really good things there, but you touching on when you have that dog that has all these issues, if you don't understand it and don't help them navigate the world, it can be devastating to both yourself and the dog, because we love the dogs. We want to understand them, but when we don't, we can run into some serious issues. And
it's one of those things that if I'm a single female and I live on my own, I'm kind of an ideal candidate for, didn't have kids, didn't have other dogs. How is someone else with those factors going to take this dog? I know when I went to go look at Otis, there was a small family with young children who we were both kind of like battling for this dog a little bit. And then they ended up choosing me the Larimer Humane Society ended up choosing me because I was more of that kind of, they knew I was active and things like that. But I always say, like, if I were to have given up, how in the world would someone, he was 11 years of training.
Yeah, kind of constant. And that's a really good point, that training, well, there's like so much here already. So like training doesn't just it's not like you program the dog and then it's done. So just like we are with our habits, and I always relate it to fitness or health or eating habits and things like that, because those tend to be things that are really ingrained in us. And especially with something like emotional eating or disturbances like that, when stressors come up, we tend to fall back into habits. And when it comes to dog training and behavior, it's very much similar. If we don't upkeep the habits and behaviors, they tend to fall back into some not so good behaviors, and then people get frustrated that training didn't work. But it's a continued project.
One of my most common asked questions nowadays is, well, when are we looking for this to kind of die down? I don't know. I'm sure you followed my journey, but my previous dog died he ran off. He got hit by a car. And so it was you could be a dog trainer with her own business for, say, 5 years and be in the dog industry for 10 and have successful clients and be very proud of what you do, and make a wrong call and unhook the long line, and that's it, And so it's not just, once the teenage phase is over, there are just some dogs out there, it's every day, it's a safety protocol, and you can make a wrong call and something can happen. And so I chose not, I choose not to focus on what I did wrong, and more so that's how it went down. He was full of cancer, and sometimes I wonder, did he just want to go out from an adventure? But
he was really vibing, going out on a thrill-seeking
one last
level. Yeah. Oh my God.
One last party mode.
Yeah. And it's funny you touch on that, because I haven't posted it to Facebook, but I just released a video on my Instagram about, I was out with a client dog and we were walking, and the dog gets attacked by an off-leash dog, and I caught it all on film. I caught the whole thing on film. So I released it to Instagram yesterday. I'm going to post it to Facebook today. But it is very what dog training is, I really believe, is instilling the habits to the people and the dog, but also preparing people with the knowledge of when really unhinged situations arise. Being a good trainer is about implementing a proper management plan for that dog as well. So that's your off-leash dogs, and if your dog is aggressive, reactive, or anything like that, how does that person manage? If there's dogs barking at a fence and the dog just can't handle that threshold yet, then moving around and things like that. It is very situational, and getting back to when you were 19 getting Otis and just not really knowing a whole lot, I think it's something that you and I would agree that training should be required for people adopting dogs. And it's not.
before you buy a dog course.
Yes. Yes. Just real simple. Yeah. Like it could be so simple.
Totally. It's like you should take there's precursors to buying a boat. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah, and when we think about these dogs who are in rescues, and like you were saying, if I don't work with this dog, I can't keep him. And we think about how detrimental, they if they're not responsive, they can get hit by cars, they can get in fights with other dogs, and it's a health issue at that point. In my eyes. And it's not something where if you take it to the vet 100 times, it's going to be healthy. You also have to make sure that mind health is in there and the communication is, so you can prevent really major issues, or at least if they arise, how you can help your dog cope and move through it, having that understanding of what they may be going through in that moment.
Yeah, one of my favorite things I tell my clients is like, I'm not here to train your dog. I'm here to give you a toolbox. And, I can't be there in every situation to tell you how to handle that. I will provide you with the tools, and you're going to have to make the decision of which tool you're going to use in that situation. And hopefully I have done my job by providing you with a hammer, a wrench, a nail, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, just everything to get through that moment, because there is not the right answer for every moment,
Yeah, and that's an amazing point. And do you do mentoring? Have you had students shadow or other trainers shadow who expect to be trainers?
It's my favorite part of dog training.
Yeah, because it's someone else to talk to about dogs, right?
Yeah, and someone it's what I listened to a podcast the other day by the modern dog trainer, and she actually interviewed my teacher from KPA and Nan Arthur, and they were saying like it's so interesting to see all these new wave of dog trainers, and we're kind of like you and I are still kind of in that.
Yeah, we're in a weird.
We're in that
mix.
Generation. We're almost like a little bit out of it, but to see this new wave of dog trainers that have never used a prong collar, and they've never used, and because it's just not out there, and they're just clean slates, and so when I taught at the school in Portland, I mean, it was so rewarding because you just saw these students who had no background, were just starting out, and you think of yourself, for me, that was 10 years ago, and being like, that's why the first thing I taught was self-care. I was like, you need to prepare. This is going to turn you inside out and back out again, and you have to be able to learn from that and not lose the passion.
Yeah, and I've definitely gone in and out of my career, and then like bringing it back, like there's a few things I want to touch on there that are interesting, but like with students, they don't realize how much it is. They think they're training dogs, but really you're coaching people. And I get these students, and they are like all ready to go, and I'm like, okay, your first training task is to teach me how to draw a cat. And I pick up a pen and a piece of paper, and they have to talk me through the steps. And I'll be very obvious about like that I don't know where the circle should go, or that like the ear goes like on the like side of the head or something. And I'll make it very difficult, because when you're giving these people these toolboxes and you're talking to them about how to manage and how to implement, these exercises, it's something we've been practicing for a really long time, and we still learn every day with every new dog and every new household. I have someone who's talking to me right now, and their dog, like when you look at them, they excited pee. It was the gal that was on the other day. She's trying to troubleshoot this dog, and I'm just like, that's like peculiar. I've never really seen that, but I assume it's a lot of reprimand that they had done prior, and he's just conditioned from that. But when it comes to like teaching people who have yet to ever like pick up a leash and even use it right, like they hold the leash all the time, but they have never used it actually correctly.
Totally.
It's like you just have to move through it real slow and teach them these things at their pace. And so when someone asks, how long is it going to take? I just am like, it's how invested you are to learn. And how much you practice, and just walk around and drag your leash around and get used to that feeling of it being loose, because that's what we want.
Well, and that's the thing is like you turn into it's like, you go in thinking, I love animals, I want to be a dog trainer, I like people, but you have no idea you're also a therapist, you're also a teacher, you're also a school teacher if children are involved,
Yeah.
you also are the dog trainer,
Yeah.
you're also a coach.
Yes.
It's like you wear a lot of hats that,
yes.
circling back to self-care, will drain you if you don't know how to take the hat off at the end of the day. And we talked a little bit when you introduced me about a big move, and that's what happened to me is I put on too many hats and just drowned myself.
Yeah, and I saw the stress in that era. I remember you just like, a lot of your posts were like you were working with the horses. You were just like, you were starting to just be very like, hey, I need space.
I took a step back. I've done that twice in my career. So in 10 years, I've stepped away from dog training twice. And it was because it just... you get so proud of yourself because you're like, okay, I'm connecting with clients on a personal level. I'm so proud that I can do something so well. But then it's like when you walk through the door, it's like, I'm not the down-to-earth dog lady. I'm Erin. And like, excuse my French, but who the hell is that?
Yeah.
Like, who is this person without dogs? I have dog tattoos. It's like sometimes I really forget, because I want to be that all-encompassing person, I forget that at the end of the day, I'm a human being with her own emotions and her own life, and that's important too,
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I'm kind of I'm sure everybody notices I'm diving deep into this, and I'm all in. I kind of hit a point with the artwork where I was like, it didn't spark I love it, but it didn't spark the same like gumption as like when it comes to dogs and creating the message of like, we're all just here for the animals. And I find myself right now, like friends I won't make time for, like going for a hike. Like I was supposed to go on that hike yesterday, but I was like, I want to edit these videos and get them out and just spread this message. And like, I'm becoming very like, just deep in it. So that's a really good thing to just kind of check in on for me. And I'm really glad you said it, because I didn't realize I was doing it. And
you don't until it's so far into it, because it's a passion. It's not like I sympathize, well, not sometimes, all the time, I sympathize with people that clock into that 9 to 5 that they just don't care about. It's money to them.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that's like, because I love my job, but then that is a catch-22 as well. Is like you turn into the job and you're texting clients at 9 p.m. at night. You're answering emails at midnight. It's like you really have to, and that was that. Going back to that question or back to the introduction, is when I moved from Portland to here, I took about 6 months off, and I was just like, okay, when I'm ready to start the business back up, like I'm going to do it the way I believe in myself and the way I know I can. And I'm not this all encompassing pet sitter, dog walker, hiker, coach, class teacher. I am just a couple of those things, and that's okay.
Yeah. But that's good that you went through all that to hit that discovery, and you can set those limitations for yourself. That's awesome. No, that's really eye-opening for me, and I appreciate that outlook, because it's something that I should be careful of moving into this. I think I justify it in a small way, whereas like during COVID, like that was 3 months of like I didn't get to be around a dog, and that was a really long time. So now I'm just kind of like making up ground. But yeah, I relate on like that 9 p.m. text when your client is stressed and you're like, I have to find this information for you. I have to try to put it in context. And I love to do that. I truly do. But I could see how over time it can get to you. I kind of wanted to circle. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, especially in a relationship, or especially when I feel very thankful that I'm in the healthiest relationship I've ever been. And it's nice to have that, even if it was because I'm closer to my family now. I didn't have any family in Portland.
Yeah, and where are you located currently?
Yeah, so I'm in Chester County, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I'm kind of in like 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Cool. So
and
go on.
I moved back last September from Portland, Oregon. We drove 3,000 miles.
Dang.
But it's just those little reminders from loved ones that are like, hey, I see that you're not doing this, this, and this, but I know Erin is also made up as, so, and it's nice to have those people that are close to you kind of giving you those little Tweety birds that you give to clients sometimes that you don't give to yourself,
Yeah. Oh God, that's all really good stuff. So I wanted to touch on, you kind of know, it's something I wanted to talk about is tools. And so mentioning,
I love this question. I thought this was so cool.
Yeah. And so you mentioning that there's this new wave of dog trainers who have never even seen a prong collar or anything like that. And I was that person. And I went into my own discovery, and I can, elaborate on that a little bit more, but I just want to hear your perspective, because again, we've never even talked on the phone, so I don't know what your views, so I don't know what your views are, and I would love to hear the perspective of why people are so truly against tools. I get that there's like all this like science out and things like that, but I just want to be more well educated about it and hear the argument, because I know with the studies and the science and all this stuff, but then I think about it, I'm like, are these studies really inclusive to everything? Are they testing dogs that are truly in trouble and very scary, as well as are they testing the client feedback? And one of the things I know studies were big on was like the fallout of the tools, but I'm like, you can look at that across the board in any type of training. I get people all the time who are like, this system didn't work for me. I need something more direct because my dog is going to pull me over and break my arm. And we've tried pumping it full of treats and it doesn't work. So I just want to hear that perspective on why you think the tool situation is so aggressive.
It is. It's I think I am like the least political communication I hate talk politics, and it's kind of in that realm. You've got
it's very political. It's very extremely
and can get quite aggressive.
Yes, on both ends, but
so I do consider myself a positive reinforcement, force-free. It's even hard to say force-free, because if I put a gentle leader on a dog, you know what I mean? So, I would say, I am a positive reinforcement trainer, and my main source of training is clicker training or reward-based training. And I will not sugarcoat that I had a collar on Otis for quite a long time. I had an e-collar on Otis, excuse me. And so I like to tell my story this will be super quick to answer this question. So I went to Fire Academy, all positive, and then I was like a little disgruntled because I wasn't seeing any change in Otis. He was a very, very, very difficult dog and very stubborn. He was a terrier. So it's like,
and what were his struggles, his tics? What was he reactive?
So he was male to male, dog aggressive.
Okay.
He was anxious. He was very, very high anxiety and destructive. He was a anxious humper. He was destructive. He would run away constantly. So no recall, all the positive training you could do, all my techniques that I use now, tried it with him. And like I said, male to male aggression, just kind of a lot of an encompassing, he was like a mini high stress German Shepherd.
Oh God. Yeah.
So then I was disgruntled, and I went to what is called an all adverse training school. Or a balanced training school. So I did go to
all adverse. So do they not use food rewards at all?
Not really. So it was, the school has since shut down. I'm not going to say the name, but it was, we used prong collars, shock collars, choke chains. That was our main, and e-collars. of training. Yeah.
So
Really
they use like actual native shock collars as opposed to e-collars? Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
that's what we used. And I had to get a puppy for that school. So they wanted a clean slate dog that when you started the school, you had to bring a puppy into. And that's when I brought my Australian Shepherd, my current dog, Dahlia. I brought her into that. And I have a lot of problems with her. She's 6 years old.
Well, yeah, a puppy. So I'm just going to like fill in everybody real fast on what we're kind of jamming on here. So I'm sure if you have been watching these, you're hearing me kind of fall back into the same realm of like balance and positive training. It's a big topic I talk about. So what Erin is talking about right now is the extreme of balance training. So there's an extreme in positive training where it's like, you know, very force-free, let the dog kind of do what it wants until it gets something right. Then you click and reward it in hopes that they'll repeat that behavior. Works really great with puppies. I call it foundation work. That's an amazing avenue to go down. This side of the balance training that she's talking about is extremely terrible. So this is where we run into the problems, and I think the politics are so extreme. So an all adverse is where you pretty much just tell the dog they're doing it wrong until they get something right, and then they get no pressure or adverse, or I'll just be straight up pain. So you're essentially training the dog to avoid pain at all costs using only pain, which is awful. And when we talk about e-collars or stim collars, so they're different nowadays than traditional shock collars. That's why I asked, is it a native shock collar? Because those are almost obsolete now, I was sure. So an e-collar is much different than a shock collar. Yes, you can level it up to where it is a pretty hefty correction, but they make levels of stimulation, and it is similar to when like, I don't even like, what is that thing you have when you're at, it's like a medical thing where it like twitches the muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it's called, but that's kind of the technology they use now, and you're supposed to really use it on really low level stimulations, and it's supposed to be off leash reminder, almost like how you would like a pop of a leash to like remind the dog. But I'm sure that these people in this situation were gauging it up.
Oh yeah.
The other thing that's really wrong about this is that they required a puppy going into this situation, and puppies learn through exploration, and they're in a very docile state between like, you know, probably up to their first year, and then you start to see the behaviors of the dog kind of shine through, and you see some reactivity sometimes depending on the breed. So when you put a puppy in that situation, you really can fuck them up, which is what I'm sure happened to her. So you want to do foundation work with puppies, like really just help them get it right, and then when they start to get a little too overdone, you can explore other avenues, or you could do reinforcement training as well with that. But so that's just kind of what we were talking about here. So tell me, like, just continue from where you were at. I'm sorry, I just had to fill everybody in.
At 8 weeks old, Dahlia was in a prong collar, and just that's how I taught her how to heel. That's how we did everything. And you know,
what did that feel like when you were seeing it happen? And bad.
I dropped that. Obviously, I dropped out.
Okay.
I didn't complete the course. It felt so wrong, you know. But Dahlia is okay. So we were there. We were in that program. Gosh, probably for the first, like, it was a year-long program. I made it halfway through. So we were there for the first time, 8 weeks old to 6 months. That's how she was raised, and she's 6 years old, and I will always deal with the problems that she got from people. Yeah. So back to the talk about tools. Yeah. I personally, the thing that trainer told me I will never forget is that how am I supposed to teach somebody else a tool that I myself don't feel comfortable teaching? So I really stay out of the political spectrum because this is a much bigger issue. This is a gender issue because a lot of male trainers use these. There's a lot going on here.
There is a lot of dynamics to it.
Yes, there's gender, there's financial status, there's there's also old school mentality where your grandpa's dog was out on a chain and it was a perfectly good dog and you spanked it with the newspaper.
Yeah.
You've got there's a coast to coast mentality.
Yeah.
I remember looking at I am one of like 3 trainers in my town. And in Portland, I was like one of 30, 40, 50,
And that's one of my big questions I'm sure you saw, but go ahead and continue.
Yeah, so there's a lot to this answer, and I think personally, so my experience, and I am not going to speak for anybody else, is that I used it, and once again, I'm going to, go off what you said. I fucked my dog up. I have a reactive dog at this point, and those first 6 months they're a ball of clay, and I pushed on that clay, and I pushed on that clay until she's my hardest working dog. I can train her to flip backwards if I wanted to, but at the end of the day, and here's the perfect storm I also created. As I worked at a doggy daycare at that time, and she was doing the doggy daycare 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and so I A, trained her adversely, and B, over socialized her so hard that now you have a reactive dog tolerant dog, reactive on leash, I believe because of the prong, and then now so over socialized at a young age that she's just like over it.
And that's the piece where it's like, oh my God, that just like breaks my heart. Because I could see where it's like that gut feeling of like, ooh, gross. Because I had a similar experience, but in a positive realm. And I don't know if you heard my last talk where it was, I worked alongside somebody who is really politically positive. Mm-hmm. And the things that happened to the dogs for the sake of them just using positive training, it was not positive. It was extremely learned helplessness and a lot of force. But just because there wasn't a prong collar on the dog, it wasn't. It was and it was really, really sad. But my like stomach aches for you there, and that's why I think it is so important to educate, whether it be vets or vet techs or people in daycares, about the process of learning for dogs or just training in general. Because if they see something like that, a prong collar on a young dog, it's not where you want to be at in a puppy's life. I think the soonest I have a dog. Yeah, go ahead.
And I did not mean to interrupt. And, in my tool, any tool can be used abrasively.
Yes.
You can cheat a collar wrong. You can cheat a gentle leader wrong. It's really, and this is the problem sometimes I have with the positive world, is like, it's really hard to be completely force-free. You're saying, so in dog training, there's positive punishment, positive reinforcement, negative punishment, and negative reinforcement. Mm-hmm. And we positive trainers can still do positive punishment. You just, and it's just so hard to really stay in one lane of traffic. But I will say the problem I have is the ego that each party has, and that there's just no openness to learn or to just hear out. This is all also sort of metaphorical for politicalness. It's the adverse world also seems very like, this is how it works. This every collar for every e-collar for every situation. And that's I don't feel that way, but I also feel like, if I can't put a gentle leader on a dog, so my combo is a gentle leader front clip dual leash combo. I use that all the time. And I currently have a client who's in her 70s. She has a very high energy Irish water spaniel, and it's a safety protocol. But if I don't add gear to the dog, along with mimicking and rewarding its behavior, how am I going to safely have this lady walk her dog down the street? And she has tried a prong, and it blows through the prong. So it's like, it's this, there's so many factors other than not hurting the dog, or so many factors other than shoving the dog treats all the time.
Yeah. And I think of it almost like, I'm an artist, so it's like artists have different styles. Like, and then there's also like the tattooer, which I don't tattoo and I don't use a tattoo machine. So I'm not going to be like, oh no, you shouldn't get a tattoo because it's permanent. But like, I have tattoos, but I'm just relating it to like, there's different styles even to that. And dog training is similar. It's like you pick up these little things along the way. And again, I was just very flooded with the positive mentality, and the aggression of that side for most of my career. And then when I discovered tools, I was very careful about reading dogs when introducing it, as well as like I have dogs that come in now who walk on prongs and I'm like, this is not what he needs, and I'll switch it up. And I like I like gentle leaders for the dogs who are scared and need just like counter conditioning work and things like that. Or if they go ahead.
I was going to, this conversation could also add the same stigma against medication, is that administering medication, everyone thinks your dog must be in the loony bin if it needs medication. And it's like, if I could go back to school and if I could advance myself any other way, it would be so that one day I could prescribe medication, because it should not be such a stigma. If you have, like, as a trainer, how am I supposed to try? I could do the gentle leader. I could do the thunder shirt. I could do the positive reinforcement. How am I going to get anywhere if the system is completely shut down? There's no training happening there. You could hire me for years on years, but I'm not going to make any progress unless we can calm the brain, the hormones, the cortisol, things that's just getting shot out. It's the whole thing. So
and that's a really good point, because it is like, I think Sammy pointed out, I like to describe things a lot in layers. Like when it comes to your dog, there's different layers of things going on, and sometimes it is like you add a layer of meds to help cope. Like for me, my big view on training is however you can help the dog cope with things. And like getting back to our own self-care, like everyone's like, go to therapy. And it's like, I've tried, that doesn't help me cope. It almost like it arises more anxiety in me and it pushes more pressure. What helps me cope is the painting, is the going on a hike, is the working with the dogs. It is helping somebody out. Like those are my coping systems. And it's similar with dogs. Like they have their own different coping systems. And it's just all about kind of being a translator advocate for that.
And that's what I find so interesting too, is that I always think about this for my dogs, from Otis here on forward to Dahlia, is like, you also cannot get so hung up on your dog's on your dog's story. Like, okay, if your dog was abused and now they're afraid of, like, clients of mine, even myself, I'll be like, I used to be like, Otis is just so naughty, like, there's no change. People can get so hung up on the dog's story that it actually takes away from the dog's progression. And it's the same as you, is like, if you have childhood trauma and you just hold that as your story for your whole life and not taking steps to move forward, how are we going to, it's a whole thing of, and I always thought about that, like with Dahlia, and if I hold on to, like, I screwed her up at such a young age, I'll never be like, well, she is doing a great job helping me with my puppy now. She helps me so much in my, like, I have to think of the positives and not just get so hung up on her story.
Yeah. And I agree. I see a lot of that too, where the dog is shy or shut down. They're like, I think he was abused. And it's like, it's probably just under socialized. Like, totally. Honestly,
that is such a thing to say, and it's like, they may have not been at all.
They could have heard a firework like one time, and now it just doesn't like trash trucks. Like, it doesn't mean the dog was beaten into a corner. Like, maybe, totally. But we still have to help them cope with the situation at hand, which totally goes back to the toolbox, and it kind of leads me into what I want to talk to you about next. So, thank you so much for your input on the tool situation. I hope I answered the question. I don't even remember what the question was on. It just, I guess I'll finish up that thought with this. So in your world, if you have a dog that is outside your scope, or that you're like, okay, I need to refer out, Do you talk and educate about tools at least? Or if you see a dog, like, I know it's like, okay, I don't believe in it and I won't apply it. And that's one thing I tell my students is do not use or try to teach something that you cannot teach. If you think it will work for the dog, and I also tell my students, do not put a prong collar on a dog until you're at least 2 or 3 years in of doing positive. Like, you need to learn these fundamentals first and really, really do everything you can before going there. And I don't want you going out there, seeing what I do and it works, and then you go out there and you screw some dog up. That is not what the industry needs.
That's the fine line. You know, it's not applied correctly. And I dropped out of that school 6 years ago. I am so rusty on using those tools. Teaching how to do them. But, I think the main point you just brought up is, as trainers, we need to know when a case is above our level. Mm-hmm. And I've had a couple where I've just been like, at this point, I'm going to need to refer you out. I think, yes, the idea comes up of like, should I try different tools? But at that point, I'm like, this case is, I'll never forget this one dog. I use his bite videos all the time for my clients and educational videos and stuff. But I had this dog with a rescue I worked out in Oregon. The dog scared the shit out of me. I mean, as trainers, you think we're really tough and we can handle that kind of stuff and we're not really afraid. We're a healthy amount of afraid, but not, and, he resource guarded anything in the house that he thought for a second was his. He could move from one spot in the house to the other and claim the couch, but then under the table was his.
Or like a dirty sock on the floor.
It's so intense. Resource guarding is very intense. And his adopters he had such an intense bite history. Wow. And they had, the punctures on their hands were unreal. And so I paired up they were going to foster him before they adopted him back out. And I took all these seminars by Lindsay Wood-Brown. She's fantastic. She was also my other teacher in KPA. And she did a fantastic seminar. I went out and got this like fake prosthetic hand to practice. Like I went all in and I tried everything positive, click tree for this. And it was just above me. And I just said, I have it all on. I have multiple of our sessions on video. And at one point, I was just like, I don't feel comfortable putting an e-collar on this dog. I'm not educated enough.
Good on
this
you.
Point, this case is above me. You know? And so I think even if you are educated in adverse tools or whatever, you really just have to, the first mature thing to do as a dog trainer is look back and say, are you qualified for this case?
Yes.
Don't force something to happen. Mm-hmm. If don't make fetch happen, Gretchen. It's just, that's the most mature thing I think you can do. And it's also, in a business retrospect, it's a liability issue. You could get sued over something that you think you could do and you can't, and someone gets really hurt. So that's how I always think of it, is, am I qualified for this? And if I'm not, how can I at least assist these people in going in the right direction?
And there are those tough cases that help you grow, but there's a difference. There's a difference when it's way out of your scope and when it's like, okay, this is difficult, I'm going to problem solve, and like you kind of start to progress in that direction of those really difficult cases, but you have to know when it's too far out of reach. So great point there. So kind of just changing gears, I really want to hear about the experience of you working with the deaf dogs and that is really cool, because that's where you get to kind of shine and you get to use that really almost like pressure off approach and let them figure it out, because you can't just like push a blind or deaf dog into some situation. You have to really, really guide them. So I'm really interested to hear like you discovering, getting into that, as well as I saw your kind of progress with Ghost and his whole journey. And then, how it kind of stuck with you. And do you use those methods and that kind of learning process with regular dogs who can see and hear and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I think that the best part about dog training is it's a little industry, but it's not at the same time. You have agility trainers, you have aggression dog cases, you have, And I think the biggest struggle throughout my career, since, I'm 30 now, I got into it when I was 19. And even before then, I always worked at feed stores and dog, since I was 16. And so it was just finding like, what was my niche in dog training?
Yeah.
I'm such, and I don't mean, I'm such a Sagittarius in the aspect of like, I need to be special in something.
Oh, well, you're special at smiling. I've always loved your smile.
You have to be special, and so in Oregon, I were at the doggy daycare I worked at. We had a deaf dog come in, Strider, and he was like, I love Aussies. They're just, everyone has that breed, and I'm an Aussie girl. So, and they all kind of have this like albino look to them.
Yes.
So you can kind of really start to tell a little bit. And I started to get really close with his mom, and his mom was on the board of Deaf Dogs of Oregon. And one of the board members always created all these, like, she sewed all these cute bandanas. And I started off honestly by going broke and just buying all their products, like their bandanas, they had training mats that were really cute. And just supported the rescue financially. Just like, I love all your stuff. And so finally I was like, look, can I help out? Can I do anything? Can I volunteer? So then I started taking pictures for them at events with just my Nikon. And then I started fostering. And so my first foster was this, like, oh my God, he was really cool. He was a 2-year-old deaf double Merle. So when you get these dogs, when you have a deaf dog or a blind dog, a lot of the times, and at least a lot of the times it's caused by a genetic issue. So basically Aussies have the coat type, Great Danes have the coat type, and you see these blue Merle coat types, right? Yeah. And so what happens is if you breed 2 blue Merle dogs together or 2 Merle coated dogs together, you get, most of the time, you have a 25% chance that each puppy will come out with a mutation, and they're called double Merles. So basically what happens is the Merle coat washes out any dark spots. So that's why they have almost this albino look to them. And what happens is there's not enough blood supply or blood flow that goes to the ears, or sometimes the eyes have what's called microophthalmia. So what that means is the eyes are physically too small for the sockets, and they stink back. And so they just come out with all of these issues. And for a long time, people just killed them. They just killed those type of puppies. And so I would, the fact that we're really in the last 10 to 15 years have started talking and advocating for these dogs is so huge. Because I started off, so his name was Ty, he could totally see, but he couldn't, he was, deaf as all get out. And so I started dabbling with hand signals, and I was obsessed because your trainer, you get very used to using your voice, yes for a verbal marker, the fact that got taken away from me was so exciting because I'm a loud person, like I laugh loud, I mark yes very loud, enthusiastic. So to go straight to hand signals was really, really cool for me. The downfall of these dogs is they sometimes have I don't want to say a lot of the times, but they do come with neurological issues. So unfortunately, that dog died a year later from cluster seizures. He was only 2 years old. So
I think I remember you had adopted him out. And
it happened after I adopted him out, and he had his first seizure with me. So that's when I also learned, safety precautions of when a seizure happens. I did all of the wrong things for the first time. So then my second deaf dog is when his name was Zeb. He was like a little rat terrier, like whippet kind of mix. And that's when I really started diving into it. So that's when I started shaping. Shaping is basically like marking approximate, it's kind of like the hot and cold game for a dog. You're trying to reward them the closer that they get, So I would use hands. So his reward was a starfish hand. So kind of all, fingers out, kind of like you would teach a kid to do a starfish or open hand. And that was his marker reward. And some of the videos we got were just to get this dog to nose target something just from shaping was so fascinating to me, Then like you touched on, then I got Ghost, and Ghost was my first deaf and blind dog, and I just was like, I dedicated my entire life to that dog, in which it caused a lot of heartache in my personal life, and my personal dogs. I mean, Ghost did. I just gave all of myself to this dog. And
I remember him and Otis had issues, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's the part of rescue we were kind of talking about, I think, before we got on this call, is that you have to know when to tap out. And that was the hardest thing I've ever, I'll probably choke up a little bit. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, was tell the rescue, I can't do this anymore, because it caused such a rift in my relationship at the time. My dogs were crumbling. Their personalities were just falling apart.
Wow.
And that was one of so in my career, I've tapped out from 3 dogs pretty much. One was that terrier, and then another one was Ghost. And I just tried. He had such bad separation anxiety. He used to spin in circles, it was neurological. It was constantly he would always spin to the right with a 45 in a 45-degree angle until he would pee himself and poop himself and just spin in it. So that's back to the conversation of medication as well, and
totally understandable.
But I learned, I learned between those 3 fosters, and I was hooked. From here on out, I just want to advocate. These dogs are so much more resilient than I think a human ever could. It's just, so now moving all the way back to the East Coast, I have my own. So Darla is fully blind. Mm-hmm. She is, I believe, 17 weeks, and she's partially deaf. She can hear pretty good. We use it to our advantage. But she is just the difference, I will say, between a dog that may have a neurological difference and the dog who just was born with these kind of double microophthalmia, small eyes kind of issues, is a huge difference. I feel very blessed to have her, and only in a sense of that she's not much different. It's a lot of, but we use a lot of, so pro-tactile training is pretty much what it's called. And that's when you use touch training. So for instance, you double tap on her butt and she learns how to sit. You I'll stroke on her leg to get her with 2 fingers to get her to down. Her all done cue is a swipe underneath her chin. A follow me cue is a swipe on her chest. So, drop it is a swipe on her cheek. So it's just, you're using, because her other senses are so heightened. The touch cue is so much in your advantage.
Yeah, it's just so amazing. It just goes to show the power of association. And when we think about traditional training and the words and the leashes and stuff, it's association is everything, and you can apply it to anything. People use come all the time for their dog. I'm let's just throw that out and let's use ice cream sandwich.
So long.
Because people love to say it. They're excited. The dog just needs to learn a word to come back to. That's amazing. That's so amazing.
And a lot of it is, also giving her context clues. Yeah. So by every door, we have textured mats. Yeah. So to let her, to let her know a door is right there. Yeah. For safety, right now we have baby gates by the stairs, but we're going to do the same thing by the stairs. And then, you just don't move the furniture. But that's the other thing, is we just moved. So we just bought a house. And so we got her when I lived with my dad. Thank you so much. So we got her when I lived with my dad, and then we bought a house. And so, but even before I put furniture in that house, I brought her for a full, I got it all a full, couple of hours, and I just let her map out the place. But I put every corner of the house, I put something that really smelled like her. So I don't wash the blankets very often. I don't, you have to make sure. So for her settle on the mat cue, scent is a huge part of it. You don't, I don't wash her mat that we practice settling on, because it's a huge part of the training is the scent.
Yeah.
So they say in the beginning, they say sometimes maybe use like a familiar smell like lavender, so the dog can associate you. But this is going to sound kind of gross, but we just like wore stinky clothes. My smell. That was a huge part of it. And just that nose will pick out a treat from across the yard. It's fascinating. It's really, really cool.
And go ahead.
Just the last part I was going to say is that when people say, like, especially deaf and blind dogs, when people are like, oh, what a quality of life is that? Or when people look at me and be like, I feel so bad for her. I'm like, don't. She is good. Like, she is fine. That's
amazing.
She goes swimming, and she's a totally normal dog. It's you that has to learn how to make that life so fun.
And that's so relatable. And even getting back to the ghost situation where it was like, okay, this is too much dog for my lifestyle. Making that call, because I know in rescue, we were talking about rescue, and we'll touch on a few more things and then we'll kind of close out. But when it comes to rescue, they are very diligent about, I will credit them with being very diligent about how they place dogs and certain dogs and things like that, and almost being overprotective, because when people think about getting a dog and then they suddenly have a situation where, oh, this is too much and they have to rehome or something, it is a devastating feeling. I did that with a Rottweiler when I was 18 or 17. I was very young. And making that call to rehome is devastating. Totally. And especially for someone who loves dogs and is like, I can do this. And it's a devastating feeling. And I just relate to that. But it's also part of the importance of the education for people. When it comes to getting a dog, you may, if you just invest in a good trainer and you just invest in some good education, like the internet is a little scary and sketchy. I would just talk to someone and have a conversation and see what feels right to you and makes sense to you. It's kind of like reading a book. You can pick and choose what you like and what you don't like. But like really,
and I think it's such a wide range of emotions too. You know, there are some people in rescue that I'm like, I think the best thing for you is to rehome this dog. It's really tearing your entire life apart. Yes. But then there's the other spectrum of like, oh, you're just rehoming this dog because you're lazy.
Yeah, and it's really sad.
Like,
yeah,
it was such a wide aspect, and I think there's working with rescues and working really closely with a rescue out here is making sure, like, I love this team because they can, we all come together and they're like, I need you to evaluate this dog. We need to know exactly what kind of home this dog needs to go in, because, and like with Ghost, he was adopted out twice, and I sat down with him and I was like, I am not going to sugarcoat anything. You need to like strap in your belt. This is dedication to giving this dog a very calm, steady, routine life. And if you're planning to have kids in 3 years, like, you're not looking at the next year of your life. You're looking at, what do you really plan on doing for the next 10?
That's intense. Yeah. That's really intense. Oh, poor guy.
Yes.
I hope he's doing well now.
He's still with the rescue, and there will be someone out there for him,
And some dogs just kind of live in rescue and things like that. And, that's if it's going to protect the dog and just give them at least a little bit of a better life where they can't hurt somebody or hurt themselves. That's a big thing I'm huge on. Like, if it's going to be a safety issue for someone and themselves, then just do what you can. Like right now at the daycare, there's a dog lady. I don't know if you saw my post on her. She needs a home.
You just posted that today. I think I just saw that.
It was like today or yesterday. She's this like big pit bull. She's like a whale. But she's just so sweet, like sweet as sugar. And she's just like, but she gets excited and she's this big dog, and where, I just want to make sure someone can walk her properly, because she has impulse. She wants to go say hello to everybody. And it's not in the way where they're like, oh, she just wants to say hi. Like, this dog really wants to vibe with everyone. Like she's like, what's up over there? So like I just love her, and I can't sustain her in my household, but she's a wonderful dog. But like it's my job to her now, being her advocate, to just make sure someone can walk her, and I don't just hand the leash off to someone and is just like, yeah, here's this giant pit bull that's friendly. It's like, no, she's got to have composure. She is a pit, and it's important for anybody who has a certain type of breed to have that responsibility. But that's
the thing. You know, one of the things you said to think about was these double merles. A lot of the times they're herding breeds. So like when you adopt these dogs, a lot of them, first off, adopt them for the way they look, because they are kind of cool looking. Yeah. This all white look is kind of really neat. But you have to put that they are a herding dog before the fact that they're deaf, or they're a herding dog before the fact that they're blind. Like, I have a family member who has a blind dog, and she's like a Catahoula Aussie kind of mix, and she has to muzzle the dog when she's playing ball with her other dog, because blind as a bat, that dog still clips the shepherd's ankles when it's running for the ball. And it's like crazy. It's not the fact that she's blind. That's like the back burner here. The fact that she's a high drive herding dog is really what you have to think about first. And so when getting these dogs, you have to understand what, like, healers can be deaf. Great Danes can be deaf. There's a lot of pit bulls that can be deaf, and it's really the breed first before the impairment. As much as I could use that word, it's that. Got to think of that first. Yeah,
and that's just, if there's any other message, like, I know I've been like every single one of these, I'm like, here's the message, but it's just know your breed, know what your dog's bred for. I think that's going to be a common thing in my message, is that is a huge role in your training. And also how you can help that dog live a better life. Let's see. I think I just kind of want to move into kind of closing. We are kind of heading over our hour, but I mean, it's just been a very, as always, passionate, like, I know, I'm telling you guys, like, we just all need to talk about the dogs so much more, whether, regardless of our views or where our responsibility lies in the industry, because we all love them and we all just want what's best. And even those trainers who really are kind of on the extreme sides of the realm, like, they're not doing it because they're mean people. I just think they're not open at this time, but it doesn't mean they don't love the dogs.
And I also think that, at least from moving from West Coast to East Coast, I think there's a little bit more of that adverse or, training method out here, because I will say I struggled a little bit in the beginning when I first started my business, because clients really want fast results out here. And I loved in your last podcast, you were talking about with Sammy that it's like hiring a personal trainer or a therapist. Like, you have to be in it for the long haul to be able to really make progress. And positive training or positive reinforcement, when used in a case that it's super appropriate, it takes a while. It takes a really long time. And I struggled at first, because a lot of clients just dropped me because they were like, this takes too long.
And that's the unfortunate thing. It is unfortunate in that way. And that's why, like, I call it foundation work now, because I just want people to realize, like, that first year, people are really into it. So I talk about, like, you're laying this foundation work, and it is something that I think people are a little bit more, when they think about training, they want the dog trained. And they want it done. And they're like, okay, the trainer came today and now the dog is going to know everything. No, it's like you're laying a foundation, because then the dog is going to start to display behaviors that are most likely problematic, because it's an individual. So I work in an area of LA where, yes, there isn't a lot of money, but that's why I love to do the work that I do. But even with the tools, that's why for me, like, getting into the video editing and everything is because then I could take a full snapshot session and be like, here's what I did, here's why I did. And that client forever has it to reflect on and watch and go over and over and over again.
Videotaping yourself is huge.
Yes.
It
Yes.
really is. And that's like one of my favorite things. My dad and I, when we lived together, we got into an argument one time because he was like, so when do you like really kick up the training here with Darla? And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, I literally, he didn't understand what I meant. I didn't, and it was because you have, like, in a dog trainer's brain, you're like, I'm going to train this dog for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like, for the rest of its life, is that training for me isn't sit down, roll over, stay. It's, can you handle a bus driving by?
Yes.
Can you handle someone saying hi to you? Can you leave that dog alone when we're walking on the street? It's life skills.
Yeah.
It's like me learning how to write a check and me having to balance a business.
Yes.
It's just the Pythagorean theorem that we
it's a journey. It's just like, I relate it to fitness so much because it's like, you call it a fitness journey. It's not like, and it's the same thing. It's this journey because things are going to happen, as you know, and as I know. I'll post that video about the dog that came at us when we were. It's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that is gold, girl. That's training video gold.
I know it's funny because the thumbnail is like attacked by off leash dog, and it's like this little Jack Russell.
I kind of like sadly always wish to get videos like that because I'm like, this is gold.
It was incredible because I only am holding my phone. It was before I had a bunch of equipment, and I like, you'll just see it. You'll have to like anybody want like I'll repost it right now.
I have a bite video of the dog biting the fake hand, and that is in my like gold archives.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't really want to provoke that kind of stuff, but when you have it on footage, you're like, okay, this could be used for a long time.
Yes, exactly. It's so educational.
Too is the and I know we're closing out, but the use of technology in today's dog training is COVID through a whole nother avenue of dog training. Like, I didn't realize, like, I could make money virtually. Like, this is great. I can, and it was still. It's not as personal.
I know.
I love to do people one-on-one, but the fact that COVID really brought a cool avenue of dog training that I find.
That's when I got the cameras.
My friends, get shit or get off the pot. Like, if you don't go with this new wave of doing things virtually with a dog trainer, you're not going to make money. You know? So it was, but that's the test of if you're a good people coach or not. Because if you can't coach someone over technology, then that's a whole nother aspect of your business. You need to step up.
And I know that exercise that I do with drawing the cat for people is it always throws this huge monkey wrench, and they're like, what the? And I'm just like, this is really all you're going to be doing. This is really it. Like, you could work with the dog. We could all work with dogs and we can understand it. But like, you have to teach the family how to do it. So do you have any questions for me before we kind of head into the end?
Just more commenting that this is so cool that you're doing this. I think this is,
Thank you.
I have tons of other people I could
anybody.
I was like, I have tons of people if you want to reach out to that in this industry. The other thing I want you and the listeners to hear is that anybody listening to this who has a puppy right now, and if you want to join, I am an administrator of a fantastic group with like 11 other really talented women and men. I think it actually might all be women, but it's called Raising a Puppy. It's like Pandemic Puppy Raising Support Group. And this thing has been so cool. It's been, it started off with just in the beginning of COVID, and it has over I think it's got over 5,000, 6,000 members now. It's just really growing. And
is it a website or a Facebook group?
It's a Facebook group. Okay. Yeah, it's really cool. And it's just, it's been something that
That's brilliant.
Is a really,
because
really
a lot
cool
of people got dogs, and now they're just like, oh, crap, can't socialize it. I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Sweet.
We just got people from all over the country who are dog trainers coming together. I mean, I think I've been more social during COVID. I mean, like online, and then I have been, and it's been really, really a cool outreach. So I would love for you to check it out and your listeners.
Oh, for sure.
It's just it's a fun group to be a part of, and So yeah, I just wanted to comment that this is great, and I'm just so thankful to be a part of it. And
Thank
we
you.
actually got to really talk and not be roommate talk.
I know. It's not just and we shouldn't all be so afraid of each other.
No.
If you're another trainer listening to this and you do balanced work, or you do competitive healing or something like that, open up and talk to whoever you want to. And I think it was another thing that COVID kind of did was it really surged dog training in a way, because then suddenly people were stuck at home with their dogs and they were noticing all these things, and they're just oh, that's weird. Instead of they're gone for 8 hours at a time and then they just walk their dog, and that's their interaction. And I know for me, this was I discovered Tom Davis, who I don't know if you follow that trainer or know of him. He is a balance trainer, but he does a lot of behavior modification, really gentle soul in the way that he coaches. And I just kind of follow his suit in finding what's right for the dog in the situation, and not just slapping crap all over the dog and yanking and cranking them. Very kind, gentle approach to coaching. And I found and followed and just consumed his work when I couldn't get around another dog. And it really opened my eyes. And he has a podcast, and I was really terrified of him. And I really know, I respect him so much. I wasn't afraid of him. But I really believe in who you really want to be and look up to, you should talk to them. So I booked an online session with him, and we had a talk just like this. And I was now that I've talked to the scariest person that I could think of, I'm just going to talk to everybody.
That's how I love that about you. And I see, with deaf and blind dog training, there isn't a lot of people out there that do it. And so Amanda Fuller with Keller's Cause and Deb Bauer, I've just really tried to connect with them, because there shouldn't be an ego in dog training of well, I do it the best. So, I just want us to come together, especially with the double Merle advocacy, is just saying hey, what can I learn off of you? How can you help me tweak this? I mean, pro-tactile training is not well known.
I know. I wrote it down because I was what?
Who am I supposed to learn from? Who am I?
No, that's.
I'm not trying to compete for clients with you. I'm just trying to come together as a group. And I just love that about you in this podcast too, is that it just, and with the political climate we're all in, I just don't see the need to be more competitive and more, and especially with I'll just throw this on here, is the BLM movement, being a privileged white woman, I'm going to sit here and educate myself on everything I need to educate myself on. I hear you. And put anything I knew aside. Really. It's such a metaphor. The dog training, opening up and learning about dog training and what you believe in is such a metaphor for everything else. And so that's why I just love it so much,
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I so appreciate that people listen and want to hear it. And I hope that new dog owners can really understand what we're coming from and going through. Is there anything else you just want the general public to know about you and your training, or what we go through, and just any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that, I'm just so proud to be an openly queer woman dog trainer.
Yes. Good.
I just, like I said, I'm just so thankful for you including me in this, because it's hard to be a young trainer and get your voice out there. And this was a huge opportunity for me. And I just want everyone to, just to cap up everything we talked about, always consider your self-care. The job is always second. We love dogs, they're our lives, but you as a beating heart and need gas in your system, and you need, and just to put the ego aside, is to just always keep learning, always keep your heart open. And third is just finding the right support group, is that if you're surrounded by people that don't support you in your endeavors of always learning and wanting to keep, fostering or whatever you want to do, just make sure you surround yourself with the right support group. And I had to tear every single wall down I knew to be in the happiest place I am now. So it's like I moved 3,000 miles. I was in a horrific breakup. I had a lot of personal things happen. And now, you know, a year later, I feel I've got my business back going. I'm super healthy, super happy, great partner. Like, but it's just, you got to just check in with yourself as a dog trainer, you know, and make sure that you're putting you first and remembering who you are at the end of the day without dogs, because how are you supposed to help dogs without knowing who you are?
Yeah, that's a big message that I learned through this, because my life is being consumed by them, which I love, but it's something I know when I hit that wall, I'll definitely think about this and reflect on that. Erin, thank you so much for being on, and anything you need, reach out to me, and you know, we'll collab on stuff like this. I'm really excited for the talks coming. I want to have someone from the Humane Society on and what they do in taking dogs and things like that. But I really appreciate your perspective and chatting with me. And I hope you have a awesome rest of your Sunday, as hectic as it started out.
Coffee talk with you.
I know. So just stay grounded. Keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing. I've noticed it, and it's impactful. So I appreciate you, and so everybody listening. Yeah, definitely do. So I'm going to let Erin take off and have a beautiful rest of her Sunday there on the East Coast. But thank you guys for checking in on this talk. And I will talk to all of you soon. Bye.
Thanks, girl. Bye.